People ask me what the most dangerous thing in this desert is. They expect me to say the heat, or the snakes, or a fall, or getting lost. It is none of those. I have guided out here most of my life, and I can tell you that the most dangerous thing in this whole country is not a thing at all. It is a person who has decided they do not need you. I met two of them on a morning in August, and by that evening they were both gone. In a stretch of sand I had told them plainly into their faces that I would not walk them into. They went in without me. They were sure they did not need me for it. They were right that they did not need me to walk in. Walking in is nothing. It is the walking out that no one does alone out there, and that was the part they threw away. This is one of those stories. Welcome back to Doomed Departures. What you are about to hear is a composite. The couple are invented, built from the same profile of confident, capable people I have guided for years, most of whom listen. No real person is named. I am going to call myself Raymond, and the two of them Trevor and Bianca. This is a dramatization. The land is real, the heat is real, and the reason a guide who knows that ground will refuse to enter one part of it on one particular day is very real. I am a guide. My people have kept this land far longer than there have been maps of it, and I have carried visitors across it for most of my adult life. And I am licensed and authorized to do that, which matters more than any visitor understands until it is too late to understand it. You cannot go into the backcountry here alone. It is not permitted. And it is not permitted for two reasons that are really one. The first is respect, because this is a living place with meaning that is not mine to hand out to strangers and not theirs to trample for a photograph. And the second is that the guides are the safety system. Go out with one of us and someone always knows where you are, and someone always knows when you have not come back. Take that away and you are not free. You are simply alone in a place that does not forgive being alone. And I want you to understand what a guide out here actually carries, because visitors often think we are drivers with a good camera spot memorized. We read this land. I did not learn it from a course. I learned it the way you learn a first language from the people before me over a whole life until it stopped being something I know and became something I simply have in the body without reaching for it. I can read last night's wind and this morning's sand. I can tell you where the heat will gather and where a breeze will find you, and which beautiful open place has no honest way back out of it. None of that is on any sign, and most of it is in no book, because it lives in the people who have held this ground a very long time. And when you hire one of us, that is what you are renting for a day, and it is worth more than the whole price of the tour. Trevor and Bianca hired me for a private day in the backcountry. They were in their 40s, fit, well-traveled, the kind of couple who moved through the world expecting it to arrange itself around them, and mostly it had. I do not say that to be unkind. It was simply true, and you could see it in small ways all morning, in the ease of people for whom things get handled, for whom a closed thing opens and a full thing makes room. That ease is a pleasant way to move through a life, and it works almost everywhere, and it had clearly worked for them for a very long time. The trouble is that it teaches a person, quietly and over many years, that the world negotiates, that every no is really a not yet, a starting position, a thing to be moved with enough confidence and enough insistence. And the desert does not negotiate. It is the one counterparty that will not move for you, that cannot be charmed or pushed or waited out, and they had never in their lives met a no that meant no. They had a list of shots they wanted, worked out in advance from other people's photos, and near the top of the list were the dunes. There is a run of high open sand out in the backcountry, and in the cool of the morning, it is one of the most beautiful places I have ever stood. I take people there. It is on my tours. There is nothing forbidden about the dunes, and I want to be clear about that, because this is not a story about a rule. It is a story about a day. The day was going to reach 115 degrees, and the dunes are the one place in all of this country that turns that number into something far past deadly, and I have known exactly how they do it since I was a boy. And so that morning, when they pointed at the sand, I told them no. Let me give you the whole of the reason, because they would not let me finish it, and you deserve to hear the part they cut off. There is no trail in the dunes, and there cannot be one, because the wind takes your footprints the moment you lift your foot. So the way you came in is erased behind you as you walk it, and you cannot follow it back. And there is nothing to steer by. A dune is not a landmark. It moves, it shifts, and every one of them looks precisely like the next, so a person, even a little turned around, has nothing anywhere in sight to tell them which direction is out. They do not feel lost. That is the terrible part. They feel certain, and they are certain in the wrong direction. And the sand itself is the hardest ground there is. Every step gives half of itself back, so a mile in the dunes takes what 3 miles takes anywhere else, and all that extra labor makes your own body throw off heat on top of the heat coming down from the sky and the heat coming back up off the sand, which is as bright as snow and just as blinding. There is no shade because a dune shades nothing. So you are working 3 times as hard, cooked from above and below, losing water faster than you ever have in your life, unable to find your way, hours from anyone, with a single person on Earth knowing where you went. That is why I said no. Not because the sand is haunted, because I know, the way I know my own name, what that place does to a body on a day like that one. And I did not just refuse. I offered them a whole beautiful day in its place. The great stone formations everyone comes to see on solid ground with the vehicle and its water and its shade never far. And I told them I would gladly bring them to the dunes another morning, at first light, in the cool, when the sand is the wonder it is meant to be and not the furnace it was that afternoon. Most people who I turn away from the dunes on a hot day can hear the difference between a guide protecting them and a guide being difficult, and they take the dawn trip and it is magnificent, and they thank me. A good no now for a better yes later. I have built an entire life out of that honest trade. I had another couple out with me 2 days later, and I tell you about them on purpose. Older, quieter, and they wanted the dunes too. I told them the same thing, the heat, the sand, the no, and I watched them hear it. The man looked at the sky and looked at the number and said that they would take the dawn trip instead, and could I bring them out early the next morning? I did. We stood on the sand in the cool blue light before the sun had any weight in it, and it was everything the pictures promise and more, and they were quiet for a long time. And then the woman thanked me for the day I had refused to give them first. Same guide, same dunes. Same no. They live because they could tell the difference between a man protecting them and a man in their way, and that difference. That whole ability to hear a hard no as care instead of an obstacle is the entire thing that separates the people I drive home from the people I go out searching for. Trevor and Bianca did not want the trade. The dunes were on the list, and the list was the point. And a guide who would not deliver the list was, to them, a guide who was not doing his job. Here is the thing I most need you to understand, because it is the whole shape of it. My no was not me failing them. My no was the most valuable thing I said all day, and it was the exact thing they were paying me for. Anyone can say yes. You do not need to know one true thing about a place to walk a stranger into it. What you hire a real guide for, the whole of what your money buys, is his no, because his no is a map of everything out there that will hurt you, drawn over a lifetime, and most of it is written nowhere else. When I said no to the dunes, I was not withholding the tour. I was giving them the best part of it. But they did not hear a man protecting them. They heard an employee being difficult. And Trevor turned to Bianca, not quite to me, and said the thing. He said, "We do not need him for this. It is just sand." And she agreed, and they looked at the dunes sitting there so close and so gentle, and they decided that a lifetime of my knowing that ground was worth less than a picture. It is just sand. I have turned those 3 words over more than any others since. They are true, and they are the most dangerous sentence a person can carry out here, because it is just sand the way the sea is just water. They had walked on sand before, at a beach somewhere kind, an hour from a parking lot, and their bodies remembered sand as a soft and harmless thing, and they could not feel the difference between that memory and the thing in front of them, because the thing in front of them looked exactly the same. The sand that kills you and the sand that does not are the same color. There is no warning written on a dune. Let me ask you something, because this one is not really about the desert. When was the last time the person who actually knew, the local, the professional, the one who had done it 1,000 times, told you no, and you heard it not as knowledge but as an obstacle in your way? As them being unhelpful or overcautious or difficult? Tell me below, because that is the engine of the whole thing. They did not doubt me because I had earned their doubt. They doubted me because my no was in the way of what they wanted. And an inconvenient truth from an expert is the easiest thing in the world to reframe as the expert just being unhelpful. I told them they could not go alone, that the backcountry required a guide, that this was not my rule, but the land's. Trevor, still smiling, still perfectly friendly, told me they were grown adults, that it would only be a few minutes, that no one would even know, and they started walking. I want to be honest about what I could and could not do, because people always want the guide to have found a way to stop them. I could refuse to take them, and I did. I could warn them, and I did, more plainly than I have warned anyone in years. What I could not do was lay my hands on two grown people and hold them out of the sand. I am a guide, not the law. So I did the only things left. I put all the water I had on them, which was still not enough for the dunes, and I told them exactly how little time they had before the heat turned deadly, which was far less than they believed. And I told them that if they were not back at the vehicle very soon, I would call it in, and that I hoped the photograph was worth what it was about to cost them. They laughed, not unkindly. They laughed the way you laugh at a friend who worries too much, and they walked into the dunes, and the wind erased them behind them one footprint at a time, and I stood at the vehicle and watched them shrink and then watched the sand take them from sight. I did not leave. Some guides would have, and no one would have blamed them, because on paper, two adults had gone against my word and against the rules, and my part was done. But I stayed. I stood in that heat, and I watched the dunes, and I counted every minute against the number I had given them. And when the number was spent and they had not come back, I made the call, because staying was the last thing I could still do for them, and I was not going to be anywhere else when it turned out they needed the man they did not need. Here is what the dunes did to them, in the order I knew they would. At first, it was wonderful. It always is. The sand was soft and golden and strange, and they got their picture. The two of them alone on a wave of it with nothing else in the frame, exactly what they had come for. And they felt fine, because the work of the sand and the theft of the heat do not send you a bill early. They felt so good that they went a little farther over one more rise for one more angle, because when a place feels that gentle, it is impossible to believe it means you any harm. And then they turned to come back, and there was no back. Their footprints were gone. The dune they had crossed looked like the four around it. The vehicle was not in sight, and neither was I. And there was no rock, no tree, no shadow, nothing anywhere to steer by. Only sand and sun in every direction, all of it the same. They were not far. That is the cruelty of it. They were never far. But not far in the dunes with no way to read them is exactly the same as lost. And they picked the direction that felt right, and out there feeling right is worth nothing. And it was, as it almost always is, wrong. Try to put yourself there for a moment, because you cannot understand this from the outside. Take away every landmark. No tree, no rock, no building, no trail, and no footprints, because those are already gone. Put yourself in the middle of 100 hills of sand that are all the same height, the same color, the same shape, under a sun, straight overhead, so there is not even a long shadow to say which way is which. Now, which way is the vehicle? You do not know. You cannot know. There is no information anywhere in anything you can see. And a person cannot bear to stand still in that, so they walk. Because walking feels like doing something, and every direction is equally wrong, and the walking is the thing that empties them out. Standing still and waiting to be found would have been their best chance, and it is the one thing a frightened person in an oven can almost never make themselves do. Now the heat came for them the way I had known it would. The thirst first, and they drank the little water fast because the sand was such work, and then the water was gone. Then the headache, easy to blame on the sun. Then the quiet unraveling of the mind that no one feels happening, where simple things stop adding up, which way, how long, how far, and a person keeps deciding with a brain running too hot to decide well, sure of themselves the whole time. And there was no shade to stop in and no hard ground to rest on, only the burning sand, and every step to search for a way out cost them 3 they no longer had. And near the end, for at least one of them, the sweating stops, and the skin goes dry, and here is the merciless part. They often feel better right then, feel the misery lift, and take it for relief when it is the body, surrendering the last thing it had to cool itself. I do not know which of them felt that first, and I am glad I do not. No one was coming yet because the only person alive who knew they were out there was me, and I had called it the moment they were overdue. But out here, the calling is not the arriving. This is remote country. The dunes are far from the road and far from everything, and a search of open shifting sand with no fixed starting point in that heat is one of the hardest things there is, because the very thing that made them unable to navigate made them nearly impossible to find. On hard ground, I could have tracked them. In the dunes, there was nothing to track, only the same erased sand that had swallowed them. I gave the searchers everything I had, and it was more than most searches ever begin with. The exact place they walked in, the minute they crossed it, the water they were carrying down to the bottle. It should have been enough, and it was not enough, because the dunes take even good information and make it useless, since the place you knew they entered is not the place they are now, and there is no line of prints to join those 2 points. We were searching a thing built to defeat searching in the hottest part of the day against a clock that had started the moment they laughed and walked in. And I went out into it myself, in the worst of the heat, long past the hour when the sensible thing was to wait, because they were mine, my clients, my responsibility, and because I was the one who knew that ground, and the plain truth I have to carry is that the man they said they did not need was the man out in the dunes, calling their names into all that identical gold. You do not leave people out there, not even people who left you first. That is not how I was raised, and it is not what this land asks of the ones who keep it. I'm not going to walk you through the finding of them, and I'm not going to set you down in that sand because they were 2 real people who loved each other, and this channel has a line I will not cross. They were found together, close to one another, and in the end, not even that far from the vehicle, which is the part I have never been able to put down. The rulings were heat-related, both of them. There was no crime, no accident, nothing hidden. There was 115 degrees and a place anyone can walk into and almost no one walks out of alone. And a guide who said no, and 2 people who were certain they did not need him. If any of this reached you, do the small thing that carries it to the next person who thinks the guide is the thing standing in their way. Like this video, so it finds someone before they walk off from the one person who could have brought them home, and subscribe, so you are here for the next one. Not for me, and not for a number on a screen. Do it so that one more confident traveler somewhere hears an expert say no, and understands that the no is the very thing they paid for doing its job, and stays and lives and spends the rest of a long life mildly annoyed that they never got the shot. I have thought about this more than any trip I have ever run, and here is where it leaves me. All my life, people have come to this land wanting the yes. They want the guide to carry them anywhere they point and make the country bend to their list. And they get frustrated when it will not bend, and they take the guide who tells them no for a guide who is failing them. But this land was never for sale, and it does not know or care what anyone paid. And the guide who tells you no is not a clerk refusing to do his job. He is the one part of the whole day that cares about you enough to disappoint you. Trevor and Bianca could not tell the difference between a man in their way and a man on their side, because in the lives they had led, those had always been the same man. Out here, for the first time and the last, they were opposites, and the difference was everything. They said they did not need me, and they were half right in the way that killed them. They did not need me to walk into the sand. They were strong and well, and the dunes were soft, and the picture was right there. What they needed me for was the part that never came, the walk back out, the reading of ground that cannot be read by anyone who did not grow up reading it, the knowing of which sameness is the way home. That was the thing I had to give, and the thing they refused, and there is no photograph on earth that was worth what they traded for it. I still take people to those dunes. At dawn, in the cool, when the land is willing. And I still say no, on the hot days, to the ones who push. And some of them still look at me the way that couple looked at me, like I am all that stands between them and the thing they came for. I have made my peace with that look, because I would far rather be the guide they resent and drive home alive than the guide who says yes to be liked, and I know now, in a way I will carry for the rest of my days, that the most important word I own, the one this land spent a lifetime teaching me, the one worth every dollar anyone will ever pay me, is the word no. This has been Doomed Departures. Stay safe, and we will see you on the next one.